Hello and welcome back. Okay, this is the start of part 3 of our wiring harness install. Starting to make some progress here. Started securing the harness, running it onto the back of the firewall, below the drip edge to run it across the engine bay. This again is our neutral safety switch and four-wheel drive indicator, reverse indicator. That will end up getting wrapped and tied in with this and brought over to the passenger side and then down to the transmission and transfer case. Here's our hood light. I have our brake switch hooked up. I have that secured for now. Coming across, these two purple wires on the front here are our oil pressure sensor and temperature sensor. Getting everything organized and run cleanly is the hard part. Here are 4 wires that actually are not end up not being needed, so I have them terminated and capped, and then just ran them over here. I could have taken them out of the harness completely, but felt that who knows if we'll need them down the road. At least here, I have an easy leg to get a hold of if I need to. These are for our blower motor. Here's a ground, power, ground. Right now, what I'm trying to do is figure the best way. This is switchable power. Yes, this is switchable power from the ignition, which will then switch on the power for the fuel injection module, the coil. This is our tachometer. So I got to tie this into one of these brown wires here. So we can, anyway, so we're going to have to get working on that, but I'm trying to figure out the best way to run these. These are for our EFI system, and I'm just trying to figure out the cleanest way to run those. Once I know how exactly I'm going to run those, then starting to tie some of these wires together, shorten them, connect them, wrap them up, will definitely be much easier. All right, we'll be back in a few. I'm going to see what other ways I can figure on this and see what I come up with. Okay, I think I came up with a solution that I like. Mounted my 10-pin module back here because basically what's being used out of the brown wires that I had looped, I clipped the light brown. Dark brown gets tied into the tachometer, which is right here. These are points which get tied together, so that's all right here. These two will get tied together. Brown and purple will get tied together. Then I think I'm going to bring, this is my switched power, which is going to switch on my coil ignition. There's coil ignition, and then these 2 pink wires. One is for my fuel injection module, and the other is for the distributor. Okay. So, and then I think what I'm going to do is then I can bring these 2 wires together, bring them down here, right on top, and I can basically attach this up here, down here, bring this across there. I'll wrap all these, and I can make that connection with that switchable and those other 3 wires right in this neighborhood here, and make that all nice and neat. With this pin up here, these are for my fans, and I think that's going to end up getting wrapped, running across, coming around, and then we'll attach into the blue and pink wire for my fan relays right down in here. There's obviously a mess of wires down here because this is where all my power and negative leads are, but then that'll tie up the fans. Then the other thing I have is my fan relay. My blower motor, and my fan relay comes out of this one. And I think that's pretty much it. I gotta see what this blue wire is here. I forgot about this one. Okay, so we're gonna have to look into that, but I think that's generally the way I'm gonna go. That will clean up all the wires up front here, and then I can wrap and secure them. I can secure this. Then I can get the fans secured. I can get my switchable power for the relays taken care of. This is the exciter wire, what activates the relays coming off the EFI. The rest are power and negative, and then I have wires that will then activate my starter solenoid, and I got to tie those in. So believe it or not, I am making progress. These two wires, like I said, is for my oil pressure sensor, and for my temperature sensor, those I'm going to end up wrapping. And temp sensors right here, oil pressure sensors down on the side, so that whichever one is going to the oil pressure will probably follow along with my power lines, come down to where I have my junction done here where they're connecting together, and then it'll drop right down to the sensor. This way it stays clear of the headers. So I think we are coming along. So I think I found where I wanted to put things that I like and I think works the best with my setup. I ended up basically attaching this right to where the battery handle would go, just zip tying it in. It keeps it up off the heater hose, keeps it away from the far from the heat as possible. I have this routing up through here, but I think I'm going to disconnect it and bring it along the bottom. I can zip tie it to this ground wire that's right here, which will keep it up out of the heat, because as you can see, that ground wire is going to come up to the negative terminal. So I think I'm going to do that. And again, it'll keep it away from the heater hose, away from the header. And then I can then I can get this stuff connected, get this stuff connected and finalized, get the fans connected and finalized, and we are definitely making some serious progress. So let me go ahead and move this to where I believe will be the best spot. And then I'm going to get these connections together here and the connections together up here. And then I'll come back and show you what that progress looks like and what's going to be the next step with the fan and blower. Oh, and the other things that we have to do that are down here. But we are definitely making progress and getting some organization here. So we are moving right along here. Got our signal to the distributor, coil, fuel injection, or our switched power all hooked up. This is set up here. I've got our tachometer hooked up, points hooked up. So as you can see here, I mean, we're starting to get a little more cleaned up. Next one we're going to do is we're going to hook up our fan relays. That's also going to include this gray wire, which is going to use the 901 that we had to hook together in the interior to get that powered. So I got to open this loom up. We're going to bring these back. I'm going to run this over. And then everything is going to, I think I'm going to bring everything down and hook it up right here. This way there's plenty of room to work with it. So that's going to be the next step. I think I'm also going to go ahead and put the ends on the temperature sensor and the oil pressure sensor. And then we'll go ahead and get those hooked up. And otherwise we are moving right along. All right. Be back as soon as I have those done, and I'll show you how I ran those and got those connected and how I finished off those sensors. Continuing to make progress. Okay, so we have our fan relay triggers hooked up. Obviously we have our power supply, our switch power to our EFI and our electronic ignition and distributor hooked up. I now have the starter solenoid hooked up. Pretty much all I have left now are multiple ground and power leads that I'm going to have to hook up on the battery. I have some that are on the terminals. Like I said, I think I'm going to possibly put in some supplemental bus bar so that I have enough room for everything. And then I still need to do the oil pressure sensor and the temperature sensor. And at that point in time, there'll probably be enough electronics hooked up on this that I could actually go ahead and attempt to start on the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and see how I'm going to organize all this. And then I will come back and show you all what I came up with. So we can hopefully get all this cleaned up a little better. This obviously is going to get zip tied into here and secured. This fuel line is going to have, this is a fuel gauge wire. It's going to have to run back across to the driver's side and then in through into the firewall where it'll hook into the rear harness. All right. So I will be back shortly and show you what we came up with. Okay, progress. So, neutral safety switch, which I don't have because I'm a manual transmission, but reverse light switch and four-wheel drive indicator. This comes plugged in to the engine harness. This is basically made so that you can run this down to the transmission and transfer case and hook up terminals and connect it if you don't have a factory connector. If you have a factory harness, it'll plug right in. I have to get some 3/8" loom to replace the loom that's on here. I took the old loom off because it was obviously covered with oil and grime, and checked the continuity. These are good, so I just got to get some loom, and then I'll be able to run that basically back down between the engine and the firewall to the transmission transfer case, get that hooked up. This will all get loomed and secured to the back of the firewall here. Now, I think when I left before, I had just gotten done hooking up the starter solenoid. I now have the oil pressure sending unit hooked up. I ran the wire down through here, over to here, and then it connects into. See if I can get the camera down in there. Got a terminal there, right on the oil pressure sending unit. You can see just beyond the header there. Did the same thing with the temperature sensor. Temperature sensor is now coming down, running right up the intake manifold to the temperature sensor. Ran the fuel gauge wire back over the firewall, across into the passenger compartment. And what I did was opened up this Adelphi connector, took the wire out that was coming in here. It's the pink wire that goes to the fuel sending unit. If you have the tool, which would look something like this, you can pop that connector right out. And then it already had a male end, so I just had to put a female end and connector on the yellow wire, and was able to connect the two of them together. So now my fuel sending unit, which is going to not be using what is in the painless harness. As you can see in the rear, there's a pink wire right there, and then that goes back to right here. Okay, and so that is all connected there and set up. So my fuel sending unit's hooked up. I pretty much am just down to waiting for some bus bars that I'm going to mount here, because I essentially have 1, 2, 3, 4 power leads, positive leads, and 1, 2, 3, 4 negative leads. And I don't want to put them all on the battery terminal or have negative leads. I mean, I've got some negative leads already on the fender. I don't want to really put any more. I'd like to just have try and get a nice organized location here to clean all this up. Once that is cleaned up and secured, we pretty much are done in the engine compartment for the engine. We have our blower motor hooked up. Now there are 2 wires with the harness. There is a ground wire, which I hooked up over here to the firewall, which is technically not even needed. It's given in the harness in case you have a fiberglass tub. So the blower motor basically should ground directly to the firewall that it's secured to, and it's just one single power wire. So, okay, as soon as I get those bus bars and I'm able to get this organized and secured, I'll come back and get that on film, and then we'll be wrapping up part 3 here. Okay, got my bus bar that I'm going to use for my positive and negative leads. We're going to set it right here on the fender. All right, but the only problem is there's no flat area on this fender to securely mount it. So I'm going to end up having a little bit of a delay. I don't have the ability to do CAD software, so I reached out to a member on the CJ Restoration Forum. He is a CAD software designer, or CAD designer, and he actually designed this bracket right here that we're using on the Sniper coil for the ignition coil, which allowed me to securely mount it to the fender and give me a nice flat space to locate it. He, with some measurements and some photos, he whipped me up a design, a bracket, and we already sent it off to send, cut, send, but it's going to be about 4 or 5 days before I get that bracket. And that will mount right here on the fender and allow me to safely and securely wrap up these positive and negative wires. I also got the reverse and four-wheel drive wires run and connected. They're loomed up here, secured. I have it running right down the back of the motor to the bell housing. Let me get underneath and I'll show you where we come in when I get some light and get underneath there. All right, we're under the Jeep, and I'm going to get some light up in here, and you can see the wire coming down the back of the bell housing. Comes right around the shifter there. I have it secured with a Christmas tree zip tie there on the top of the transmission. Then it plugs into the reverse switch on the transmission, and I'm going to bring it over to the transfer case side, where you'll see that it's also plugged in, right here, to our four-wheel drive indicator on the transfer case. Get some light over there. Okay, so we got that plugged in and secured. So that's all finalized and in place, and everything is nice and secure. Everything sits right against the firewall, off the motor. Doesn't rub on anything, should be nice and secure there. All right, so I'm going to wrap up part 3 right here. I will come back once we get the bracket from Send, Cut, Send so we can get this bus bar installed. And at that point, once we hook up our ignition wires, we should be ready for me to put some oil in this motor, coolant in the radiator. I'll probably just take the power steering line belts off initially and hopefully go for a first start on this motor. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helps anyone out there. If you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe. If you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to leave them below. Thank you very much and have a great day.